This morning, investigators are looking to see if Iran is behind the cyber attacks that affected more than 30 water plants in Minnesota and others in at least 7 states. Officials say the hackers are modifying passwords to lock out operators.
They most certainly have the capability to conduct these types of cyber attacks.
Okay, a stark intro there, Paul, but nonetheless, it kind of paints a picture of the possibilities when something like this happens. Minnesota is battling with the threat, in my mind. Of course, the water was not actually contaminated, but the threat bubbled to the surface, no pun intended, pretty quickly on this one.
Oh, yeah. You know, interesting. Some quick facts on this one, Mike, that I pulled up. There's 170,000 public water systems in the United States, which actually are pumping 34,000 billion gallons of water daily.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a crazy stat. 70% are non-compliant. So when they were inspected, they're non-compliant with basic federal cybersecurity risk assessment and emergency planning mandates. 70%. So again, 107, imagine this.
Wow.
And I didn't say it very well, so I'll say it quickly again. 170,000 systems, 34 billion gallons of daily flow, 70% non-compliant with federal mandates for cybersecurity, 350 vulnerabilities identified by the EPA for critical or high-risk cybersecurity vulnerabilities across the U.S. water system in recent inspections, ranging from default passwords, unpatched remote access software, unplugged directly into public-facing internet modems.
Wow. So they're basically fully exposed to the wide internet.
Well, and on top of this, Mike, you know, and the human three rules, you know, basically humans can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So this is important, right? This definitely needs priority.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's look into what the potential outcomes of this kind of disaster are, because I think it's worthwhile.
Well, can I jump back for a minute? Because for those of you, you know, a water treatment center, and most people just turn on a tap and water is there.
I do.
Yeah. So if you've ever had the chance, I've been lucky enough to go to a couple water treatment centers because being involved in building. You get to know the city guys, and then you're interested to go see it. It is kind of disgusting when you go see it. Treatment centers, you know, as they're pulling out old tires from the water and all this stuff as they're trying to filter through. But you know, it's very important. So here's some key takeaways. So as the water is, you know, before it comes through your tap, the treatment center is pumping millions of gallons of raw water under pressure. So that's the big thing. So, you know, it's those pipes are pressurizing to push the water through them. So remember the pressure. They're chemically dosing, whether it be chlorine or disinfectant, coagulation, pH balancing. So they're tampering with your chemical ratios that could poison the supply water line.
Right. It's a very fine mix of keeping the water.
Oh, yeah. It's a chemistry experiment that's going on live. When you're sitting there watching them, you know, they're dumping... they're dumping big vats of chemicals into your water as it goes into these pressurized line. They're maintaining static pressure to keep untreated groundwater and bacteria from seeping into distribution pipes. So if the pipes shut down, the risk is, quite frankly, the groundwater and all the things that are surrounding those pipes start to seep through, right? So
if there's no pressure going through that pipe, it gives opportunity for seepage into the pipe.
They leak.
Unless there's pressure going
pressure going through them, right? They're not, you think about it, you know, the age of your, the pipes that are actually in the water transferring your water, they're old. You know, the older cities, you know, look at our city, quite frankly, and our cities in Canada. They're feeding critical municipal systems, hospitals, all your HVAC cooling is actually coming from water. So you can't run your HVAC because, quite frankly, there's no water going to it. It would burn up. So what would happen is it would go on fire, and that would be basically the end of your power plants need water cooling. Most of them are running off water cooling. So if water stops, they have to shut them down. If they don't shut them down, they go on fire.
Nuclear facilities.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nuclear power
all
needs
has to be
constant
shut,
cooling.
All has to be shut down. Fire hydrants shut down. So there's no fire protection in your cities anymore. So, wildfires, all those things that we're fighting now, unless they're getting it from lakes, but, that's an issue.
And also pumping into remote areas where these fires, or even a city fire.
Yeah.
If you think about it, a condo on fire in major centers, or the inability actually with power down for people to even live or exist in those buildings at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You live in a 60-story building
goodness.
in the center of town.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah, it's scary stuff,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Now, most of these systems, so most of the 170,000 systems they're talking about, there's a system, it's called SCADA, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. So they're monitored by this system. So when they refer, you hear it on the news all the time, the SCADA systems were attacked by the cyber attacks. These are the systems that monitor your water, the pressure, all the things that, that guy sitting at the water treatment center is looking at. So as he's looking at those
He's
gauges,
watching the levels and the
exactly. So that's the challenge. And I guess the thing that happened in Minnesota, which was the good thing, is they reacted properly in time to shut the system down, to react to, so they could figure out what was going on. The system wasn't totally nuked. They could go to backup systems, but pretty scary stuff if you think about it. Pretty
It is,
scary stuff.
let me do this. When we talk about scary, if I may, you handed off an article from the New York Times, the failing New York Times. But it's interesting about how this is being presented in the media, and then we'll take a look at some of the realities associated with this. It says the attack in Minnesota was probably the work of Iranian hackers, according to U.S. and state officials and others familiar with the matter. That's in the first line. Paul, within 3 sentences, they put this: hackers could be attempting to pose as Iran-based in an effort to could be posing as Iran-based, just to ratchet up the tensions between the two countries. Though former intelligence officials said such a scenario was unlikely. Here's something I should also note. Other cybersecurity conducted by Iran against the United States has risen to the level of nuisance more than alarm. For example, they released all that Kash Patel, all the emails and photographs stolen from his personal account. And also, there were no indications that any water supply had been rendered unsafe to drink based on SCADA. So the only reason I put this out here is because I want to earmark this as a cyber attack that might have been the key that started the engine on the next phase of a war in the Middle East. We have seen this before, weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're enriching uranium. All of these various tales that were told to find out later had nothing to do with the alleged assailants.
Yeah. Well, a nation who's polling very heavily that they don't want the Iranian war, all of a sudden, you see the attack on the homeland, and that changes the equation.
Okay,
so
you're
now
trying
we're
to
into
poison
it.
us?
Yeah, you're going to go for it. Now, it's interesting, and I've been through, I think I mentioned on a couple shows before, I've been through a couple hurricanes down the U.S. In Florida when I was living there doing a couple projects. Having lost power. So for those of you just wanted to go through it from a logistics perspective of what happens.
What happens?
Well, it's interesting. And I'm going to talk about it from two sides. So what happens technically, and then what happens kind of what the population do. And then I want you to kind of talk about the health, because it's very interesting, because they do parallel each other, but, you don't really think about it at the time. So, 2 to 4 hours, your water supply goes down. So water reserves, because there are water reserves in a lot of cities, they start to begin dropping. So, what's in the pipes starts to go away. People are using it. Hospitals move into conservation mode. Cyber teams work to contain the attack. So you'd have a bunch of people running, try to get the systems back up and running. The population, as they hear about it, and I went through this in a couple hurricanes, they start going to the supermarkets and the shelves start emptying. So bottled water sales spike. Residents begin filling containers. Social media rumors spread really fast. Hospitals begin to face critical water shortages. So it becomes a real, you're seeing the mild panic at 2 to 4 hours, 6 to 12 hours. Now this is kind of where
2 to 4 hours.
2 to 4 hours.
People are cleaning the shelves out like it's Black Friday.
I got caught in the first hurricane that I got caught in Florida, which is a bad hurricane. I reacted too slow because I had to take care of the building that I was building. So I got stuck in. And by the time I went to leave, I couldn't get out. I couldn't get a plane ticket. I couldn't get onto a highway because the traffic was too backed up. I went to kind of bunker down. The grocery store shelves were bare. All water was gone. There was nothing on any shelf. The gas stations were locked down. This is within 12 hours. It's within a workday.
That's a terrifying, and your body starts to operate I would imagine, at a different frequency. Suddenly you're in survival mode.
Yeah.
So now your body chemicals are operating differently.
Oh yeah. I went back to the site I was building, and I went and created a bunker in the basement, and I ended up spending 5 days with the security team that was overlooking the site, who were an interesting group of guys, mostly ex-military from the U.S. military, who were there to protect the pillaging of the site after the hurricane. That's what they were paid to do. So I ended up bunkering down and going through a really crazy storm, which I thought the building was at one point going to collapse on us, but that's the only thing we could do because it's scary stuff. But so now you're 6 to 12 hours in, you have no water. This is in the case of, water shutdown. Municipalities issue emergency alerts. Businesses dependent on water begin closing. Fire services monitor. So the fire services begin monitoring the water pressure. Restaurants, gyms, salons all shut down because they rely on water. Parents go to their schools and grab their kids because there's no water in the schools. Communities start checking on seniors and the vulnerable, right? So that's what kind of goes down now. So now you get to the 12-hour mark. A water distribution. Most cities have a water distribution plans. They're not worth very much, quite frankly. They're like hurricane plans. They don't really do much because it's anarchy at that point.
At that moment, yeah.
Yeah, but they issue them. Governments coordinate state and federal and provincial support with whatever they can if they have military. By this time, as I mentioned, grocery shelves are empty. Anxiety's high. Families start to figure out how to conserve every drop of water. Infrastructure trust is gone.
Where are we at this point?
You're at 12 to 24 hours.
So not even the end of the first day.
No, this is the end of
this is full battle mode for
right.
survival already.
So then after 24 hours, it's survival mode. So after 24 hours, you're into full survival mode. Hospitals start to prioritize critical care. So they try to figure out how to keep the people alive that are on life support. Water restrictions expand. Recovery crews work around the clock. Schools close. Businesses, for the most part, close. Sanitation becomes a growing concern, and the economy's shut.
Right. Everything would have to close.
Right. So there you are. So that's what happens. So,
wow.
Because if you think about it, water supports everything: hospitals, fire protection, food production, manufacturing, sanitation, all supported by water. Right?
So in the first 48 hours, we are in lockdown mode.
Yeah.
Just trying to survive.
At that point, we are.
And there's panic in the hearts of the people that couldn't provide for themselves. I would imagine people start to concern themselves with their own lives and not the care of others.
Yeah, well, they're just trying
quickly.
to find water, right?
Yeah.
Right away, and that's where, again, when I mentioned, in the hurricane scenario, the biggest issue, and I was new, so it's interesting. I sat in on the meetings for this, and, being from Canada, I was like, hurricanes. I was really kind of underwhelmed by it.
The only hurricane we ever heard about was Hurricane Hazel, which happened decades ago here.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And they're talking about tsunamis and floods. They're talking about the wind, because they've been through them.
Yeah.
And then they're starting the conversation with me about protection for pillaging. So, and I didn't think this was a thing. I thought, oh, this is.
You lock the doors.
Oh, it is as soon as everyone starts to vacate the town, the people that stay in the town starts to pillage everything.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of times you don't see people. So in this case, people would be moving around Minnesota. In this case, if the systems would have failed, they would have been starting to pillage anything they could to find water. And if they didn't have water, they would be trying to find people who did have water. And that becomes the challenge, right?
And then once that's an interaction that changes the civility of human beings.
Oh yeah, well you're in gun toting. We all saw the riots. The riots in Minnesota. How many Americans do carry firearms? How many people have? So then you have to secure yourself and secure your water supply, because you have 3 days from the time that everything's fully shut off,
right?
And your water supply is fully used to survive, right? So that's your timeline you're on now.
Okay, so now we're completely out of water. We're at the 48-hour mark roughly, and maybe even earlier than that.
Yeah.
So here's what happens over the next few days, okay? The first few days are kind of rough. People get sick stomach. That's the major first phase. Germs, animal waste, bacteria from the water starts to hit people's stomach, because no matter how much the end of that treatment cycle, there's no way that people don't get sick off of the last bit of water that comes out of the system.
Well, it's interesting, Mike. Can you remember Walkerton? So a lot of us, we had
Walkerton, Ontario.
Yeah, a contaminated well or water system. And it was after a big rainfall, and from the cows and the manure, it contaminated their water. And that was just a contamination. That wasn't anything due to a water shortage.
Just a contamination.
Once it got contaminated, right away you saw 2,000 people, 2,300 from what I read, 2,300 people affected, 27 people had permanent kidney damage, 7 dead from that incident. And
that's a very rural area.
Yeah.
2,300 could be 23,000 in most minor cities and towns.
Yeah, and they were moving people from hospital to hospital, right? They were overrun. Those 2,300 people were violently sick, and they were, the hospitals were full, and they were moving people to the U.S. to get them treatment at that point. It was every hospital bed inside of, most of Canada was full at that point.
I think that there was 100 hospitals affected.
Were being used all over the country. So you can
one small town.
A town like Minnesota it'd be unbelievable, because as soon as the water system starts to get jaded and tainted, you're going to get people getting sick, and then from there off you go, right?
4 days into this, the dehydration spiral begins, okay? So you can't help it. Your body craves water so much, you begin to drink dirty water at that point.
Well, you have to, for those of you, I'm sure most people know it, but as you're peeing, which you're going to be doing through the first 3 days, you have to drink water, right? You're supposed to be, they tell you from a medical or health perspective that, you're supposed to be roughly matching your output to your input.
Right.
So as you go to the bathroom, you basically should go and grab some water, a glass of water, to replenish your system. Again, I joke with my son again, but 70% of our bodies are made up of water, right?
Well, even if our body is fighting the germs, by day 3, you're putting those germs back in,
right?
And you're so sick. Without IV, your dehydration begins. So even if you're consuming that water, it's dirty water. The dehydration starts to take effect. Now, this is between days 4 and 7. Here's what you feel and see at that point. The constant sickness makes it impossible to keep anything down. Without IV fluids or working hospitals, people's skin starts to shrivel, the kidneys begin to shut down, and severe muscle cramps set in. This is when the weakest, young children, the elderly, start dying from extreme dehydration.
Dehydration, yeah.
So that's just by day 7. The second week and beyond day 8 and on, it's a total system crash. The sickness spreads from person to person because there's no clean water to wash hands, flush toilets, stay clean. Dangerous chemicals, poisons, and toxic green algae from lakes starts affecting people's livers and blood. And towns turn into ghost towns. Environments change entirely because most of the neighborhood is bedridden. By the end of 72 hours, the microbial onslaught has begun, and within 3 weeks, a major portion of the population is starting to die.
Right. Yeah. Well,
So
and
this
that's
is
why.
3 weeks from that moment. Now,
Yeah, if you make it 3 weeks, you're lucky. Honestly, Mike, you're lucky to make it. And that's if you have a water supply to keep trying to drip into yourself, almost like an IV to keep it going.
so apparently, once you get to the end of week 2, the shock of what's happening to you is a multiplier of the effects around you. And so anyway, I hate to, dysentery, dehydration incapacitates the workforce. Before you know it, the people who would be supporting you can't. On a national level,
Yeah, they're taking care of their own families. They have to go back and try to maintain their own water supplies. So you have pretty much public anarchy at that point. And that's why the UN, when the UN says off restricted bombing areas,
yes,
the number one they have, you notice, is power plants. Number 2 is desalination and anything to do with water. So it is a big issue, and quite frankly, that's why this was a scary event. And it's a scary event on a number of fronts. It's scary because this is a city that's gone through, it's interesting. I got up this morning and I'm looking at the MN on that, and I'm thinking, is this in Minnesota? I had the TV off and I was looking at it. I'm thinking, Minnesota's going through something else, right? Yeah. Because Minnesota's been in the news for months now, right? We saw the ice, the ice turn into Minnesota. You had the unfortunate death of the lady who, they say was trying to run over the ICE officer, who he ended up shooting, and then they had the protesting and then the picketing.
Nick Shirley went up there and revealed all this crazy
crime and fraud, and now President Trump has actually shut off funding to Minnesota because he says if it's going to maintain such a fraudulent place, they had to send in the head of ICE to actually negotiate a resolution with the residents. They ended up pulling out for the most part. Right. It's been a tumultuous time for Minnesota.
And now Minnesota is one of the targets that he has about, there's voter fraud galore there, obviously, right? So this has been part of the spark that lit that fire.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of places across the U.S. that he's citing, but Minnesota was one of the main ones. If you take a look at the major cities in this country that have voter fraud, Minnesota, top of the list.
Yeah.
So target.
Well, voter fraud. So, you remember, it's interesting when
target on their back, I think, right? But,
yeah. Well, it's interesting because just the other day it came out that Trump was endorsing, remember the My Pillow guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike Lindell.
Yeah.
So he was actually endorsing Mike Lindell to be the governor.
You like this guy, right?
Oh, wait, well,
you don't want to hang with him, do you?
No, but he's an interesting story, right? Former drug addict, turned his life around, found religion, opened up a company. Then when Trump actually did all the June 6th, all that June 6th stuff went on, quite frankly, he doubled down supporting him, saying he didn't do it. His business kind of sunk down again, and now he's back again. And, before the show, I said to Christoph, I said, what is this guy doing now? Well, he doubled down from pillows. He's now doing bedding and linens.
Yeah.
Pillows, of course.
Lumpy pillows. He's got those lumpy pillows.
He's got a clothing line, a slipper line. He's got a towel line. He's got sandal line and a casual wear line now.
Asking for a friend. What are the slippers like?
Slippers look nice, actually. I was thinking of getting some and actually putting a logo on it, but they look pretty nice. But when I see him on TV,
get your TPL slippers now.
He is going to win the nomination as for the candidacy for the Republican Party.
Yeah,
there, of course, right? Because they love him in that state. Republicans do. Some Republicans do. But yeah, it's interesting to see that. They've even tried to change the political dynamic because, remember, during all this, the mayor of Minnesota was telling Trump to get the F out of town.
Yeah.
Right? So there was quite a few.
So this is his backlash to that. But it is weird. By the way, just what's his name? Michael
Lindell.
Lindell.
Yeah.
You know how they say, you know that mustache and hair of his? You know how they say the carpet matches the drapes? Whatever. I'll put it out there. I don't know what's more fake.
Yeah.
So this does feel like Minnesota's a bit of a target. Like not just by, they seem to be a spotlight opportunity for Trump for highlighting stuff like this. You know, oh, Minnesota's so out of control, they can't even protect their own water. Like you can hear the dialogue that comes out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I don't want to tinfoil hat it, but you know, it is kind of, when I saw it, I was like, why would anyone target water in Minnesota? But there is a reason, obviously. Maybe it's because it's the weakest systems. I don't know, but they seem to have caught, you know, let's knock on wood. They seem to have caught most of the cyber attacks that have been layered onto their system, and hopefully that, you know, maintains.
You know, Paul,
they have every federal agency on it right now.
Yeah,
but this is not.
You know, we've done shows recently about cyber attacks and hacking and how advanced that has become, how AI is affecting it. I really do worry about this because no matter what we're doing at the federal level or the municipal level to protect ourselves, it keeps coming up that we are short and we are behind the hackers who seem to always be in the lead. So when it comes to our national protection of water and power, our hospital, our privacy, of this variety, it does make me worry. It doesn't take much for somebody to be a better hacker than the system.
Yeah. Well, and the question, it's funny because I was actually getting ready and I said to my wife, I said, I wonder where Canada sits on this front. I wonder where we are. You know, have we done a report recently? I was going to look over the weekend and I'll be back to the viewers, but you know, are we as negligent as the U.S. with respect to cyber attacks on our water system? And I hope we're not. I hope we've thought it through. But you know, quite a few conversations, and I know you've had them, Mike. When you look at our power grids, we're not that robust in our power grid system.
Yeah.
So now take a look at I'm sure our water cybersecurity is about the same. I'd assume. And you know, we recently had rains. So
we had torrential rains that would have. It's so funny that you mentioned this because the rains that we're getting this summer, as we often do, are flash flood rains. They come heavy.
Yeah.
They have heavy impact. Nothing goes into the system. It all becomes wash over the surface. In rural areas, that is the problem. If the system doesn't work there and the runoff, the toxic runoff, it's the system. That community, Walkerton,
it backs right up. But we've had quite a few flash floods over the last few years. So you look at our water sewage, our water drainage systems. So if they're that far behind and they're struggling with their aging and their infrastructure, where are our cybersecurity, our SCAD technology systems and what is our backup plan? I guess that's the question I'd have to ask. And if we're seeing this, I think until we started getting ready for the show and looking at the impacts and what the number of hours that you have to react to this, it's pretty scary stuff.
Yeah. Let's see, 2 weeks and decimation of population in an area. That's without sort of the national help or an army or anybody. But if it is possible to do it in a large area, like Walkerton totally damaged our healthcare system for a period of time.
Oh, it did.
And it was 2,300 people.
It made us relook at the whole system again. Yeah. Now, I think we've done a better job going forward at our well system and our water systems in small, rural communities, but it's still a challenge. So, Mike, I don't want to finish the show. So this is interesting because going into the weekend, I think we're going to see a pretty active weekend over in Iran. I think now this is kind of, I think what, this is the catalyst for the next round of what we're about to see here. So,
well, I think the next 12 hours are kind of critical. I think that either we see a determination by the White House that this was an attack, specific attack of a specific nation or a terrorist organization, or it looks like somebody's claimed it on the behest of those groups. But there's a big battlefront difference between the two of them. One of them incites war
Yeah.
weapons of mass destruction, on the attack on the American soil. The other is, okay, we're not sure what this was, but we handled it and everything kind of chills out. I don't know how badly Trump wants to get out of this war. And I think that has a lot to do with what happens in the next 12 hours based on this. What do you think happens?
I think he's got to go forward. You know, it's you know, I was watching kind of what was the news over the last 48 hours on this. And just because I was interested to see what he would do over this weekend. Because I think this is, you know, how he likes to do these attacks when he gets the most press. So if you want to do something now, you'd get the most eyes on it because in North America, because we're going into the critical 2 weekends where people take holidays. So quite frankly, if you're going to do something that people will be sitting around and watching, it'll be people on vacation that are taking time off. You know, they get 3 weeks. They usually take at least one the first or second week of August across North America because the weather is the nicest in the country it's
the
ever
kids
going to
are
be.
off, yeah.
So I was thinking to myself, if he's going to do something and he wants to get something that catches eyeballs, which he seems to like to do, whether it's the Christmas invasion of Venezuela or it's something like this, I was thinking this. The rhetoric coming out of the White House now is a land incursion or troops to land in the country. So they're talking about it quite a bit.
And do you think this equates to them on American soil? So there's almost, it's at that point, it becomes a response.
Yes. So I think part of this is,
9/11.
Yeah, it is, thank goodness it wasn't as bad as that. But quite frankly, I think it brings back memories and then it actually consolidates views of the Americans and American military. I think at that point, I think they will move forward now. I think they've said, okay, we know what they're willing to do, so now we have to move.
Can I borrow the tinfoil hat for a second?
Sure.
So if you needed to be at war and you needed to illustrate this and you already hated Minnesota.
Yeah, it is there are quite a few coincidences there. I get where you kind of the linkages would come. You know, as always on a lot of shows, Mike, I don't know how, I try to stay away from that because quite frankly, I never know how coordinated people are. You know, you kind of look at things and you think, I've never seen governments very coordinated, so I've never seen them be able to put that many things together. But you know what?
I'll give you another.
You read on if you go on and you look at the internet and all the chatter right now, there is quite a bit of chatter about that, right?
Well, I mean, I didn't even look at that. I'm just taking a look at what we discussed today, and it seems to me, okay, how many times in history, in my life, actually, have I seen the U.S. use
big
opportunities?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a coordinated conspiracy, but I think, let's say that a university student attacked the water system, hacking it from his parents' bedroom just to be a goofy goof.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm going to do a goof on the water system. Tee-hee, look what I can do.
Yeah.
That's a moment when it's announced that the U.S. at the highest levels can say, all right, put out that press release that this is an attack from a foreign entity. Okay, so I'll take the tinfoil hat off and we'll see what happens. But if something is up of that regard, we're going to know come Monday, Tuesday.
And it's interesting. So, and I'm not tying the two together, but it's interesting that you bring that up. We've had a number of shootings. The U.S. consulate was targeted again. We did when that police officer from Vaughan was killed in the shooting where they were going to investigate the people who had done the first consulate shooting that were tied to a number of other incidents. They did report to us, quite frankly, that they were paid by foreign entities. And then we've never heard anything again.
That was the investigation continues.
Yeah. So it's interesting, it is valid because quite frankly, they have told us there are foreign entities being paid or foreign entities paying people that are inside, Canada. So for the most part, they could be, there's the same thing happening with water treatment plants in Minnesota. I don't know, but quite frankly, it does a lot of speculation.
You know what, Paul?
Buzzing around.
Maybe that's why. Maybe the incidents that we've had here in Toronto, because they came to they were big time stories.
Oh, yeah.
And then suddenly that kind of went away. But in the back of my mind, not that it went away, I would assume it's under investigation. But in my mind, maybe that was one of the triggers that went, hold on, this has a similar feel to it. So it is a possibility this is outside, but we don't know who.
Or inside, paid by they're obviously, if you look at the amount of press that's actually now tagging it to the Iranians, right? You have to ask yourself, like, there's got to be something, whether it's just that's the White House,
Spin.
release or spin. But they sure are picking it up, and you're not getting a lot of naysayers right now. You're not
true.
getting
You don't have CNN saying, "Oh, this is,"
yeah, you're not getting a lot of naysayers. So I find that interesting.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's a group of people being told that this is legitimate in some fashion or form. Whether or not they'll believe it over the weekend or they'll change their tune, that's to be seen. But it does, when you looked at it this morning, I was like, this is interesting. They're all saying the same thing.
Indeed. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye this weekend what happens. I guarantee you if something does happen on Monday, we'll be talking about it.
Definitely.
Thanks for covering this off with me, Paul.
Thanks, Mike.
Looking for reliable and convenient personal safety products? Less Lethal has you covered. As Canada's only authorized Byrna distributor, we provide a range of products for recreation, protection, and security. Explore our Byrna launcher lineup, including the LE, SD, TCR, and Mission 4, designed for different levels of performance and protection needs. We also offer the Banshee personal safety alarm, designed to protect children, women, and vulnerable individuals. Because your safety is our top priority. Shop now at lesslethal.ca.